So quick show you my outfit. I got my skirt, has shorts underneath. It's a sporty skirt that is cheetah and it's feeling really cheetah-licious today. People say, I don't care what you think of me. I don't care if they don't like my 30-inch biceps. I don't care if they don't like my huge back muscles. I don't care if they don't like my pec muscles. But guess what, folks? This video is to show you that you actually should care. Why? Because perception is reality, and what somebody thinks of you might make the difference between you getting 30-inch pec muscles and you getting that business deal and you landing a spot in the NFL. All right. Perception is reality. Therefore, how you're perceived is very important. Okay. This is my whiteboard because I'm officially a Jeopardy girl. Now, the first point is the power of perception. Okay. What is perception? Let's go ahead and break it down. So perception is basically what I see when I look at you, okay? Or what you see when you look at me, right? Now when people look at me, they might think, oh my gosh, she's like so charismatic and amazing and like slicker than a fresh jar of Skippy. And I don't blame them, right? How you perceive someone and our perception of, people is based off of our life experience oftentimes, right? So how you see me is based off of whether or not you had a good experience with exotic girl, or maybe you had a bad experience with some girl in first grade who had long black hair and look like we kind of look have similar features, and therefore you associate my persona with that person from the first grade that did you wrong, right? Perception. There's nothing I can do to persuade or convince you that I'm a good person or that I'm a bad person or vice versa, right? Why? Because perception is reality. And so when it comes to like your physique or your muscle or your fitness, and people are like, why do you have huge delts? Or you're like, I don't know. I have huge delts because Yelena said to have huge delts because her pecs are so big and her triceps are so meaty because she does so much incline bench press, right? So, you can't let that stop you. You can't let people's perception get in the way of what you want to do with your life and your choices. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, Yelena, why does this even matter, Yelena? I'm just here for the huge 30-inch biceps and all the pec bounces and for me to, and be inspired by you, Yelena. I don't blame you. And thank you for that. Thank you for admiring me from the distance. But it's important to, not necessarily value or put emphasis or value on people's perception, but I think it's important to consider how we're being perceived, because that can really make a difference between whether or not you get that job, whether or not your business grows, whether or not you get more customers. It can make a really big difference in whether or not that guy likes you or that girl likes you. Again, why? Because perception is power, perception is reality. So even if you think you are a good person and you think that you are doing right by your person or by your friends, it really doesn't matter, because how they perceive you is ultimately is what's going to determine the outcomes. So I think that perception is really important, and that you want to be mindful of how you are being perceived. And that comes back to getting feedback from people, and the best feedback that you can actually get are from people that don't like you. So people like haters, because oftentimes if people hate on you and you feel a little sting from their hate, it's probably because they are actually revealing something to you that you are already aware of and that you may not have come to accept yet. And that's actually a good thing, because that shows that there's always room for growth and improvement to develop yourself. However, there are also haters that are just going to say things and it doesn't faze you because it doesn't bother you. It's not something that you personally are insecure about. But if something that somebody says really affects you, really take a look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, why do you feel that way? And it's oftentimes because they are revealing parts of your shadow that you haven't really faced yet, or haven't really, built that courage to face within yourself. So perception, very important. Okay, number 2, neglect versus intention. So when people say, all those, ghetto girls, all my ghetto Latinas, when they say, I don't care what you think, when they snap their fingers like, I don't care what you think, get out of my face. I don't care what you think. You ever met that kind of girl? Okay. So this is the problem with that way of thinking, folks. And you say, I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think my mini skirt's too small. I don't care if you think me showing off my hamstrings is a good or a bad idea. I don't care if you think that I should be going to Yale University because they're still going to hire or let me in because I'm Latina and I'm a minority. Well, guess what, honey? You should care. That's right, you should care. Now, there's a difference between caring and letting people's opinions consume you. There's a very big difference, actually, when you are being aware of what's going on, right? What's going on in other people's minds when it comes to thinking of you. It doesn't have to be a right thing, or doesn't have to be an accurate or valid thing in your mind. It can just be a simple thought. And thoughts have no power until the power that you give them. So saying that I don't care what people think, I think is a very poor way of talking to yourself, because you do want to care, what people think. You do want to hear what people have to say. And of course, obviously, if people, assuming that they're being respectful and, decent with their words and their gestures. But I think it's important to, consider what people have to say, and to avoid saying things like, I don't care what they think in that. Now, that's not to say to not live your life and to, be held back from people's opinions. No, people are still going to have their opinion. People are going to find an excuse to not like you. People are going to find an excuse to like you. So it doesn't really matter, at least that's my perception, is that it doesn't really matter what you do, because people are always going to say something. So if you're going to do something, do it with confidence and do it to give them something to talk about. I just think there's a difference between caring and then letting that perception consume you. Okay, number 3, just have a little strategy behind it. Have a little strategy behind how you do things, because strategy is ultimately the secret sauce to success, right? It's not necessarily what you do, it's how you do things. Now, some people think, oh, well, then if it's not necessarily what you do and if it's how you do things, then I can just go out and just rob the grocery store from all the food and just do it in an ethical way, because there's just an ethical way to rob in the grocery store. No, negative, that's wrong. There's no right way to robbing a grocery store. Like, you either do it or you don't. Basically, a false narrative can win a reputation, and a strong narrative can protect one in time of crisis. So the currency of perception, basically what this is saying is that, the value of perception, the value of how you're perceived, and the value of what people think of you, or what's the cost of, not getting the positive perception from that person that you really need that positive perception from. Kind of thinking in terms of that. And again, going back to the mentality of I don't care what people think, I think it's a very dangerous mindset. There comes a point where you do want to get to a point where not necessarily valuing like more other people's opinion of you, but more so just consider what people are thinking, consider what they might think of you, consider how your actions might affect you in the future. If you want to do XYZ, understand that there's going to be consequences. If you want to do ABC, there's going to be consequences. Either way, there's going to be a consequence, and it's just a matter of picking your battles and picking your poison, essentially. This is the kind of like the oxymoron of life, and kind of the dichotomy is that it doesn't necessarily matter what your intentions are. If your intention is to be a good person, or your intention is to be a good politician, or your intention is to be a good president, it doesn't matter what your intention is. Or a good intention can lead to bad problems, and there's been times where bad intentions can actually lead to good outcomes. So even if your intent was to save this person, and something bad happened, well, it doesn't matter what your intent was. It's the result that people are going to look at.